sometimes, you just need one single number to really understand the scale of something in India.
Yeah.
And Indian Railways is a great example. It's the fourth largest network in the entire world.
Yeah.
And just a couple of years ago, back in 2022, they moved over 8 billion passengers.
That's just an incredible amount of people.
It's mind-boggling. And if you're trying to get a handle on India's development, you can't ignore the railways.
No, absolutely not. And it's not just the size today, but it's also where they want to go.
Oh, yeah.
They have this ambition to be responsible for like 40% of global rail activity by the middle of the century, 2050.
So they're really thinking big.
They're thinking big, and it shows you how important this network.
Yeah.
It's really like the circulatory system for the entire country.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
So we have to understand where it is now, what are the challenges, and how could it get better in the future?
And that's exactly what we're going to do today.
That's right.
We're going to be taking a really deep dive into the latest CAG report. That's the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. And they recently published a report on the Ministry of Railways. So you can think of this as a health check, a very detailed health check on one of India's most vital organs.
Absolutely.
And we're not just going to skim the surface. We're going beyond the headlines to unpack what this report tells us.
Okay.
Along with other information that we have about how things are going right now, what are the major problems they need to tackle, what are the potential solutions, and how can things improve in the future.
Great.
So consider this your express train to really understanding Indian railways.
I like that analogy.
Okay, so to start off, let's lay down the foundation, the basic facts about Indian railways as they stand today.
Okay.
We mentioned it's the fourth largest network in the world.
Right.
And that translates to a truly massive 65,000 kilometers of track.
65,000 kilometers. I mean, can you even imagine?
Yeah, that's hard to even picture in your mind.
Yeah, and then you add in all the passengers they carried in 2022, 8 billion passengers.
Yep.
And 1.4 billion tons of freight.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so much activity going on, and they want to grow even more.
Yeah, we talked about that 40% by 2050.
It's going to be a huge undertaking.
Absolutely. And to achieve that kind of growth, it's clear you're going to need an equally huge amount of investment.
Oh, yeah.
And that's exactly what's being planned. They're looking at an investment of $750 billion US dollars.
Wow.
By 2030.
That's not even that far away.
No, it's not. And that's only part of a much bigger infrastructure plan worth 1.4 trillion US dollars.
That's a lot of money being poured into this.
It is, and it has the potential to change the whole economy.
Yeah. I mean, think about all the jobs that will be created, not just in the railways themselves, but in construction manufacturing.
Right.
It'll be a huge boost. And then on top of that, they made a really smart move. They opened up the railway sector to 100% foreign direct investment.
So they're welcoming expertise and investment from all over the world.
Yes. They're making sure that they have everything they need to make this happen.
Yeah. So on the technology side, one really interesting development is their CAVIS system.
Yeah.
Which stands for Train Collision Avoidance System.
Right.
So it's all about improving safety. And they've got big plans to roll it out across a huge part of the network, 37,000 kilometers.
So this CAVIS system, it's basically like an extra layer of protection.
Yeah, like a safety net.
Exactly. It's using technology to help prevent accidents. And that's happening alongside their plans to upgrade their signaling systems.
Yeah, they're aiming to bring automatic signaling to 15,000 kilometers of track.
That's going to make a big difference.
Huge difference. And, we can't talk about modernizing the railways without mentioning the Vande Bharat trains.
Oh, yeah?
Which are a really big step forward in terms of the passenger experience.
They are. They're sleek. They're modern. They have those automatic doors for safety.
Quick acceleration.
Yeah, it's all about making the journey more comfortable and enjoyable.
Definitely. And of course, we have to consider the financial health of the railways. And in the last fiscal year, 2023 to 2024, they generated a massive $32.18 billion US dollars in traffic revenue.
Wow, almost all of their income.
Yeah, so that shows you just how big they are and how much money they bring in.
Yeah, it's a key part of the economy, for sure.
Now, when we look ahead to the future, the plans are really ambitious.
Yeah.
They're talking about the high-speed rail project, which everyone knows about, the Mumbai-Ahmedabad bullet train.
Right.
And then they're also developing other semi-high-speed corridors as well. And beyond that, they're focusing on upgrading the signaling infrastructure, the telecom infrastructure, expanding cabotage, and really pushing towards digitalization.
Digitalization. So that means using technology for things like predictive maintenance.
Yeah, so they can avoid breakdowns before they happen.
And using GPS for tracking assets, making everything more efficient.
So they're really trying to embrace technology to improve everything.
Yeah, and another key aspect is integration. They want to connect all the different forms of transport,
Oh yeah, railroad ports.
creating a seamless system, a really efficient logistics network.
And then, of course, there's their goal of achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2030.
Which is very important.
Absolutely.
And they're taking steps like the Hydrogen for Heritage program, looking into hydrogen-powered trains, so a real focus on sustainability.
So we've talked about the size, the ambition, the vision for the future. But for you, the listener, why does all of this matter? Why are we spending so much time talking about Indian railways?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because it's really the lifeline of the nation.
Yeah,
It provides affordable transportation for so many people every single day.
millions of people.
It connects communities and allows the economy to function.
Yeah, and it's not just about moving people, it's also essential for industrial expansion.
Right.
Think about all the raw materials they need to transport coal iron or cement agricultural products.
It's all about moving those essential goods to where they need to be.
Yeah, and that's where the dedicated freight corridors, or DFCs, come in.
Yes, the DFCs
The idea is to create separate railway lines just for freight traffic.
help lower those logistics costs and make Indian industry more competitive globally.
Now, the Eastern DFC is already operational,
That's right.
and the Western DFC is almost finished.
Almost there.
But other corridors are still in the planning stages.
Like the East Coast Corridor.
The East-West corridor, the North-South subcorridor.
So there's still work to be done, but those DFCs are going to be really important.
Absolutely. And we also can't forget how many people Indian Railways employs, over 1.2 million.
Wow.
That makes it the 9th largest employer worldwide.
It's a massive organization.
Yeah, and that has a huge impact on the livelihoods of all those families.
It really does.
And beyond the cities, Indian Railways is crucial for regional development.
Yeah, it connects those rural areas to urban centers,
Provides access to essential services like education, healthcare.
creates economic opportunities in areas that might otherwise be left behind.
So it's all about inclusive growth, right?
Yeah.
Spreading the benefits of development across the country.
Exactly. And when it comes to the environment, Indian Railways is committed to green transport.
Yeah, using energy-efficient locomotives, bio-toilets, and of course they're electrifying more and more routes all the time.
That's right. They're taking sustainability seriously.
And we also have to acknowledge the role they play in national security.
Yeah, particularly those strategic rail links in sensitive border areas.
They're crucial for moving resources and personnel quickly and efficiently.
Absolutely.
So as you can see, Indian Railways is a complex system with a lot of different facets and a lot of different challenges.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But as the CAG report that we're focusing on today points out, there are some serious issues that need to be addressed.
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, let's look at the high operating ratio first.
The OR. Yeah, that's a really important financial indicator.
Basically, it tells you how much they're spending for every 100 rupees they earn.
So for the current fiscal year, it's estimated to be 98.2 rupees.
So that means for every 100 rupees they bring in, they're spending 98.2 rupees to make that happen.
Yeah, and that's actually slightly better than the previous year, which is 98.7.
But it's still higher than it was back in 2016 when it was 97.8.
Right, so even though they've made a little bit of progress, the operating ratio is still quite high, and that's a concern.
So why is a high operating ratio a problem? What does it mean in practical terms?
Well, it means that they have less money left over to invest in things like new technology, new infrastructure expansion projects.
Because they're spending so much just to keep the trains running.
Exactly. And it also means that they have to rely more on the government for financial support.
Through the budget or through extra budgetary borrowings.
Yeah, instead of being able to fund their own growth and modernization.
So that's a major issue that they need to tackle.
It is.
And then there's the problem of slow infrastructure development. We talked about the DFCs earlier.
Right.
And those were first proposed way back in 2005. But things have moved much slower than originally planned.
Yeah, so we have the Eastern DFC up and running, the Western DFC almost there.
But the others, like the East Coast Corridor and the East-West Corridor and the North-South subcorridor, those are still in the planning phase.
Yeah, so those delays are having a real impact on the potential to lower logistics costs and make Indian industry more competitive.
And it's not just the freight side of things, the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed rail project, that bullet train.
Yeah, everyone's been talking about that.
Also facing significant delays.
It's initially supposed to be finished in 2023, but now they're saying it won't be ready until 2028.
5-year delay.
Yeah, and a lot of that is due to land acquisition issues.
Those can be really tricky.
They can really hold things up, and when you have big infrastructure projects like this, even small delays can have a knock-on effect on other plans and timelines.
No, another crucial area that the CAG report highlights is safety.
Of course, that's paramount in any railway system.
And they specifically mention concerns about inadequate safety technologies and the slow rollout of CAVAT.
Right, so CAVAT is a really impressive system.
It's designed to prevent train collisions.
Yeah, it uses automatic braking and alerts to basically stop accidents from happening.
But the problem is that it hasn't been installed across much of the network.
Yeah, as of February this year, it was only on about 1,465 kilometers of track,
Out of over 65,000.
which is only about 2%.
So it's a great technology, but it needs to be implemented much more widely to have a real impact on safety.
Absolutely. And then there's the issue of slow journey times.
Yeah, despite all their efforts to improve speeds, especially through Mission Raptor, the average speed of mail and express trains is still pretty low.
Yeah, it's around 50 to 51 kilometers per hour.
And Mission Raptor, which was launched back in 2016,
Uh-huh.
their goal was to double the speed of freight trains
Wow,
and increase the speed of passenger trains by 25 kilometers per hour.
that's ambitious.
It was, but they haven't really met those targets,
So those slow journey times are impacting both passengers and freight movement.
making everything less efficient.
Yeah, it's definitely an area that needs attention.
So we've got a good understanding now of the challenges, but let's move on to what can be done about them.
Okay.
Over the years, there have been several expert committees that have looked at these issues and made recommendations.
Right, to try and get things back on track.
For example, back in 2010, the Rakesh Mohan Committee really emphasized the development of long-distance and intercity transport,
Okay.
and that included high-speed rail corridors.
Yeah, because there's a growing demand for efficient long-distance travel.
Absolutely. And they also recommended setting up a national transport infrastructure finance mechanism.
So a dedicated financial body to support investment across all modes of transport.
Right, and they really stressed the importance of neutrality.
Neutrality in terms of,
So not favoring one type of transport over another,
I would say,
making sure that it's all sustainable and inclusive.
yeah, that's really important.
And then in 2012, the Kakhodkar Committee, they were really focused on safety.
Uh-huh.
And their main recommendation was to create a statutory railway safety authority.
A separate body independent from the Ministry of Railways.
Exactly, so that it can provide better oversight and ensure accountability.
And objectivity.
They also proposed creating a dedicated fund called the Rashtriya Rail Sanrakshakash, or RRSK.
That's a mouthful.
It is, and that fund would have a massive 1 lakh crore rupees over 5 years, specifically for safety projects.
So they were serious about addressing safety concerns.
Absolutely. And then in 2014, the Bibek-de Broye Committee, they took a more comprehensive view,
Okay.
looking at efficiency governance and the overall structure of the railways.
So a broader perspective.
Yeah, and one of their key suggestions was to create a railway infrastructure authority.
Like an advisory body.
Yeah, to provide expert advice on things like competition efficiency and the long-term economic health of the railways.
So making sure that they're making smart decisions for the future.
Exactly, and they also recommended outsourcing some of the non-core activities.
Things like the schools and hospitals that the railways run.
Yeah, so that they can focus on their core mission of providing transportation.
Makes sense.
And the source material that we've been looking at also has a section called Way Forward.
Okay, so what are their suggestions for the future?
Well, one idea is to broaden the types of freight that the railways handle.
So not just focusing on those traditional bulk commodities.
Yeah, they should develop specialized solutions for high-value and time-sensitive goods.
Things like pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, electronics, perishable items.
So catering to those evolving market demands.
And that could open up new revenue streams for them.
Definitely.
And they also emphasize the need to keep investing in high-speed rail.
So upgrading the infrastructure to allow for speeds of 160 to 200 kilometers per hour,
Yeah, that would make rail travel much more competitive with air travel.
especially on those key routes.
And they also talk about the importance of developing integrated multimodal logistics parks.
So places where you can seamlessly transfer goods between railroad and waterways.
Yeah, using technology like automation and smart inventory management to make everything more efficient.
So those parks would really streamline the logistics chain.
And finally, there's a push for greater private sector participation.
Hmm.
So getting private companies involved in things like rolling stock procurement and maintenance catering and logistics.
And even allowing them to bid on busy routes?
Yeah, to bring in more efficiency and potentially reduce the financial burden on the government.
That's a lot of ideas.
It's a really comprehensive set of recommendations.
And it shows that there's a lot of thought going into how to improve Indian railways.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to sum up, we've looked at the impressive scale of Indian Railways, and its vital role in the country's development.
Right.
We've explored the concerns highlighted by the CAG report,
Especially that high operating ratio and the slow pace of infrastructure development.
and we've discussed the various recommendations from expert committees and other sources, all aimed at making the railways more efficient, safer, and more successful.
It's been a really insightful discussion.
So here's a question for you to think about, considering everything we've talked about. What do you think is the single most important factor that will determine the success of Indian railways over the next decade?
That's a tough one.
Is it speeding up infrastructure development? Is it implementing those safety technologies more effectively?
Or is it about reforming policies to encourage private sector involvement?
It's a complex question with no easy answer.
But it's a really important question.
And for those of you listening who are preparing for the UPSC Civil Services examinations, this deep dive into the CAG report is really relevant to your studies.
Oh, yeah.
We've covered areas like infrastructure development, economic growth, governance policy, all of which are important for your mains exams.
And it could even be useful for prelims, too.
Definitely. So if you found this discussion helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel for more deep dives, and leave a comment with any questions or topics you'd like us to explore in the future.
We love hearing from you.
And our main source for today's discussion was the CAG report on the Ministry of Railways.
Make sure you check that out.
Thanks for joining us,
It's been a pleasure.
and we'll see you next time.
Bye.